Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast at RE. And we are recording live from the Power Up Live Pro Studio presented by Terra Hive. Thanks to RE Plus and Suncast Media for hosting us. Yep, that's right. We're in Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. And we are podcasting. And I had a guy in my class, and his name is Jesse Faircloth, and he is actually sitting here with me. And Jesse is an engineer, and he does off-grid, and he does home-style hybrid, and he has a company where it's called PVIT, and it kind of reminds me of PVIP, and that's the NABCEP certification that you should get your NABCEP PVIP. It's the gold standard NABCEP certification, and I just happen to have the class that you need to pass that exam on heat spring. So what's up, Jesse Faircloth?
Hey, howdy. Doing well and really enjoying my first time at RE+. It's been really exciting getting to meet everybody and hear the industry's perspectives on a lot of different things coming from so many different angles. Obviously out on the expo floor, there's people approaching every problem from every direction, and it's cool for us all to be in the same place and learning together.
I know, that's totally awesome. So what have you been up to? I know that you do like off-grid stuff, and that's kind of interesting because most people are doing grid tied and all that. So what kind of off-grid stuff have you been up to?
Yeah, so I originally got into solar out of personal interest and general necessity. I had a big, strong draw to always living in rural communities and living in the countryside, not getting too caught up in the hustle bustle of life, but here we are today.
Yeah, I kind of grew up like that in a little place called Canyon, California. It's full of dirt roads, 300 people, just like a small town, and it happens to be smack right in the middle of the Bay Area, which is weird.
Yeah, that's funny. We got to hang out in Escondido in Southern California, and it's funny how you have these little spots of just like rural area in California, and then not so far away, you got your 7-lane highways.
Yeah, we're like less than a mile from the border of Oakland.
Oh, okay.
And we're in a redwood forest.
Oh, how awesome.
Where we can just like make campfires, you know.
Yeah, not getting much sun in there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm based in Moab, Utah. Utah has 74% public land. Our county, Grand County, is about 89% public land. And so once you get more than about 10 feet outside of city limits, you just lose all of everything. Utilities, infrastructure, ability to even perform those things. And that's where I saw the necessity. And even though I'm not a great study in biology, I really love nature and being surrounded by it and living in it. So being in these remote places has always been a draw to me, but the more that we see people developing their own homesteads, and as we see home prices go up and post-COVID, everyone running for the hills, literally, you know, we saw people buying up property and trying to figure out how to start their own homestead and where to start from that. And it comes from utilities or permanent infrastructure on a small scale.
Yeah, the first PV system that I worked with, I don't know, was probably like $20 or $30 a watt. And it was an off-grid system with old Arco Solar secondhand or third-hand modules that were bought from Real Goods with the Solar Living source book. And so back in those days, when you were going to go off-grid with solar, it was expensive, and now it is way, way less expensive just because pretty much of the grid tie industry bringing down the price of manufacturing for all of this equipment, especially the solar modules, which used to be super expensive. So it makes it a lot easier to do an off-grid system than it would have been without all of this grid-tied solar around. And then we're also getting to a point too, where if the utilities aren't cooperative, there's people that are going off-grid that can be connected to the grid, and it doesn't really make financial sense to do that. But if we get to a certain point, maybe some people will do it more so, not just out of principle, but maybe financially it's going to make sense. Like I've seen people talk about going off-grid and then keeping their natural gas line for a generator, because if you're connected to the grid, they're using natural gas to give you electricity anyway sometimes. So you can just be off-grid with gas or something like that. Or you could use candles. Do you use candles?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, and it's kind of funny thinking like it could be eventually a reverse scenario where many places are operating in an off-grid stance, and then they have the grid tie for backup instead of solar for backup and grid tie for their primary. We could see something like that in some areas.
I know we've always called it like grid tie battery backup, and now I think the other way to put it is batteries with grid backup.
Yeah.
Like if your batteries go dead, you can always connect to the grid. And then that perhaps, if you set it up a certain way, where all you're using is the grid to charge a battery, and you're not using it on an inverter that could be bidirectional or affect the sine waves, then perhaps you don't even need an interconnection agreement. And I say perhaps because somebody will tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so like you said, if it wasn't for all these larger industries developing the technologies, 10xing, 50xing, 100xing manufacturing cost, we wouldn't see this trickle-down effect. And I often say, like, coming from an engineering perspective, it's like easy to invent something. Like finding a problem and then finding a solution isn't that difficult, but then implementing that solution and bringing it to mass production and then beating everyone else to market, now that's a whole nother story, especially if you're in a rural area. But like with the battery storage, thankfully we have other industries working on battery technology, not just the solar industry. So Tesla absorbing large solar company, and then also working within the automotive industry and pulling funding from multiple industries to develop this technology, this battery technology, and not just the battery technology, but automation. And so, yeah, I agree with you. And like when we see the prices going down, what I'm really interested in seeing soon is with the EVs. And if you can buy an EV for $30,000, $50,000, $60,000, then is it worth buying a $30,000 battery backup for something? And if you have your free flow power from your vehicle to your home and your home to your vehicle, and maybe you do have more than one car, most people do. So maybe you're not driving that every day, and so that secondary car has a dual function, very similar to like how our smartphone isn't really just a phone anymore. It's a calculator, it's a calendar, it's the internet. Our car isn't just a car anymore. It's not just transportation. It's technology. We have transfer of energy, we have storage, we have all these different things, generation in some cases.
I wonder if I could get a phone that is bidirectional that'll feed the grid.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I know that is super cool about having vehicle to grid. It's something that we desperately need. You know how expensive it would be? I have a couple of electric cars. It would be way more expensive than those electric cars, because I bought them used, to put that much energy storage in my house.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're buying used, or for instance, just the larger storage things, then even if it's not grid tied, just being able to have that standalone or feeding back, I guess, when you are grid tied, to push towards that duck curve and supplement the evening surges as everyone comes home.
Yeah, and let me just say this right now. It's stupid that we don't have electric vehicles that backfeed the grid, and we don't have those policies. So anybody out there listening, if you are getting in the way of our cars being able to feed the grid, you suck. We don't like you. You're stupid.
Yeah, so that is a big holdup, it seems like. But it could be interesting because they talk about how the grid is limited and how we might see limitations in the infrastructure, which is true. But as we add more battery storage to the system, I think of it as being capacitors as well, not just like a load consumption, but like also if you're on a long line and you're at the end of the line and someone in the middle of the lines, using high loads and short bursts, you might be able to supplement from the EVs in the neighborhood to keep your side from dimming down and balancing that grid. It sounds like that's where AI is headed.
Yeah, all these different types of, sometimes they call it ancillary services. There's so many things that we could do to the grid. And so much of the energy storage is in the cars. Mm-hmm. We think of it here at this conference as, energy storage or batteries or whatever, that they're all in these stationary batteries, but so many more are in the cars. People love electric cars. They're faster, they're better, they're more fun. You don't have to go to gas stations. They don't stink like a gas car when you overflow the gas and they smell bad and all that kind of stuff. You just go home and plug it in, just like you plug in your phone, and you wake up with what's essentially a full tank, and you drive around all day. And it's just dumb that we can't use that to help the grid out, because the grid needs it. Everybody's got their excuses, or they talk about, the warranty, or you're going to cycle the battery up this way or that way. Well, just put put that in the warranty, like how you cycle it and things like that. And if you're not taking it to the top and the bottom, it's not hurting it. And it's America. We should have our dang freedom to be able to connect our cars to the grid. And it's like pretty much, it doesn't take that much more technology to do it. It's just all these stupid policy makers and manufacturers and stuff that are slowing us down. It's in the National Electrical Code that we could do it. So we need to be able to do it. And there are some people that are starting to do it. And I think, though, just because of what I just said here on this podcast, that people are going to start taking me seriously, and all these manufacturers now, I bet you anything that all the manufacturers a year from now, just because of what I just said, are going to make all their cars bi-directional. You think so?
Yeah, I think we're getting somewhere. Yeah, we're going to sway the whole group.
I know. You never know what starts it. They say the flapping of a butterfly wing on the other side of the world or whatever can change destiny.
Well, I think something we need to keep in mind is serviceability, and especially in the automotive industry, and even in home and large scale sizes, we hear large rates of failures on battery systems, which are usually energy intensive mining process, manufacturing processes. And so if we are putting vehicles out and you get into a fender bender and then you have to total the whole vehicle, but the battery has less than a year's of life on it and there's no technicians that can service the vehicle, insurance has to total it out, then like it should be built into the industry that there is the remining of those minerals and reprocessing of those materials. And that should be built into the design when they're manufactured.
Yep. And I think there are some companies out there that will even do that. I remember when I had 2002 Prius. I remember when I bought it, it was like people would stand around it and go, wow, look at this modern technology. Yeah. This is one of those hybrid cars. Where do you plug it in? And it wasn't a plug-in hybrid, but they didn't understand that. And I was like, my next car is going to be an EV. And then about 5 years ago, I think it's just about my car's birthday. It is this year, I think next month or something like that. So 5 years ago, I got the EV, and I had this old 2002 Prius that was just like barely running. And I remember instead of people standing around it going like, look at this amazing technology, they were saying, when are you going to get rid of this piece of junk? Aren't you embarrassed? Yeah. But what happened is I had to change the hybrid battery in the car. And there was this guy that went to junkyards and he found old Priuses that had the batteries in them. He took the batteries out and he load tested them. So he put a load on them and he tested how the voltage dropped. Yeah. And he found all the good batteries and he took the good cells out. He got rid of the bad cells. And then when I showed up, he took my battery. He kept that because there's good cells in there. It could just be a couple bad cells that brought the whole battery down. And then he put it in my car, and that battery that was made from cells that were load tested lasted just as long as the original. We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's Solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I believe that. So a good friend of mine, Ryan Pohl, shout out to him. He was a brainchild behind some projects we worked on early on of recycling batteries when lithium was over $1,000 a kilowatt hour for a homeowner or just like a small DIYer. And we were working with someone who was pulling those from Nissans actually. And so we did a bunch of the nickel, manganese, cobalt, Gen 1, Gen 2 packs.
NMC, that's a type of lithium-ion battery.
Yeah, so we were pulling those out, and they were really cool because they're in like the 3.7 volt configuration. We were making little blocks for 48 volt, for 24 volt. The 12 volt didn't really line up super well, but like, there were some applications and just like small scale. And we built a small trailer out of those, and like maybe we wouldn't reintegrate those into an in-client usability, but we use them ourselves and use that to power local based events. And so 100% recycled technically, you know, we got to do that, and we went down to Quartzsite and did some stuff with it down there, and he got published in the Washington Post. So that was a really cool error. But then manufacturing new batteries was cheaper, and they were doing it much faster with factories. That became a thing from the past. But it is a good question, like what's happening to all these materials that we still have left, and like the old panels that get recycled. Or I've found a couple different organizations that claim to do lithium recycling, but it does seem to be far and few in between, and it's hard to determine if it's actually happening in an appropriate manner.
Great. Okay. Well, that sounds really interesting. So maybe you could tell us a little bit too about what you're doing out there. So you're in Utah. Are you from Utah?
No, I'm from Ohio originally, but I've been out in Moab, Utah for about 9 years now. And it's funny because I thought when I was younger I was going to go to school and go get a job in the city and never look back. And I made it about 6 months in the city. I'm like, I can't stand traffic. I'm like, life's too good to be upset about traffic on a regular basis. So I'm like, I need to reevaluate. And then landed right in Moab, and it's a beautiful community and a lot of community engagement. And
a lot of Utah is really pretty. It's sort of like Grand Canyon style pretty. It's not like necessarily the Grand Canyon, but all those like beautiful rock formations, and it's very good sunlight, so a little bit deserty, I guess you could say. But it's a really nice place to, I guess, probably like camp out and look at the stars and all that kind of stuff. And in Moab, I don't remember if I've been through there or not a long time ago, but I guess you probably have good sunlight there?
Yeah, so this is the interesting part is I've been bringing this up in our county commission meetings, and everyone's worried about the drop in tourism and our international relations, and the GEO's office comes down and gives us a presentation on how things are going up there. But I kind of joke that Utah is a single city state, and a lot of people will argue that Provo is its own city, and I'm like, well, for anyone who's not from Utah, it's all the same city up there. And then so that leaves the rest of Utah. But what's really interesting is we have the 74% public land, and again with Moab, Grand County, we have, I believe it's 89% public land. So the rest of the stakeholders in that area would be our National Park Services, our National Forest Services, our Bureau of Land Management, the Department of Natural Resources. Who else? We got state parks. And so it's interesting, even in our town, there's an airport project that we've been trying to get moving forward, and it seems like everybody's on board with it, but it's been an idle for 2 years because we can't get other bids. The county requires at least 3 bids. We had 1. But we don't have the outreach to find more people.
I'll bid $1 billion on it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Will that help you out?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
I'll put one in for $1 billion. You put one in for $1 billion, and then we can just, whoever the guy who was originally going to do the project will just do it.
Yeah,
and
just
then
get it done. Yeah. That's how the world works.
Yeah. So it's funny in the sense, and this is what my big goal here is finding direct mentorship for rural communities to reach out to their state level and national level entities to say, how can we meet these standards? How can we get a workforce that can fulfill these duties? And like, how can we get these permits processed and approved? Because when there's no one around that understands it well enough to even review it, and it's not because of anybody's incompetence, they're just sometimes a little more complex than what you might find in a rural town, because you might not have an engineering firm in a town of 5,000 people, or you might not have a major firm that can handle some of that stuff for the county.
So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about some of the off-grid projects you've been doing.
Yeah, one thing I told you earlier, we built a small trailer. That was a fun project that we did out of like R&D and prototypes. And for me, it was something I really desired because the idea of it being on wheels, it's a way of skirting a lot of permitting and a way to start properties when you need to show up and start development.
Yeah, because if you're on wheels, you don't have to do the National Electrical Code. And that's where a lot of people are getting away too. Like, they make tiny homes. And I know sometimes people will put the tiny home on wheels just because they don't have to deal with building permits and all that kind of stuff. Because if you can hook it up to a trailer hitch and drive it around, it's not considered permanent housing, or even if you leave it there forever.
Or in a scenario where you have a 300-400 foot well and you have that drilled, but then you need the power system to get it to the surface. Maybe you're developing the property from scratch and you need actual power supplies for tools and achieving whatever your goal is, whether that's planting an orchard or, out there building a house like traditional stick built. And so that to me is a big empowering movement of giving someone that opportunity to take a tool, which in a lot of cases is normally a gas or diesel generator, and they're constantly fussing with it and messing with it and trying to keep it going. Here's actually a really fun statistic for you for the California, and this came from a partnership with a company, I forget their name, it's like Moxie, I believe. They specialize in batteries, portable batteries, but they were helping California offset the emissions that were generated by the film industry. And the film industry's number one carbon producer or contributor is idling generators during film sets where they're using it for minimal use, like maybe running this much equipment.
Yeah, so like when some movie star gets a trailer, I guess they just run a generator and the movie star ends up getting cancer from breathing all that smoke. And I thought it was probably blowing up cars when they go off cliffs, which doesn't work so well with lithium-ion batteries, because you throw a lithium-ion battery over a cliff and it just might, sizzle, be more like a sparkler than a kaboom.
Yeah. Yeah, and so some others are fun projects that we're really interested in, especially under our branding of PVIT. The original branding I started was Homestead Hybrid, obviously focused towards homesteaders, DIYers, people wanting to just learn at a very basic level before they make the $30,000 commitment to a larger project. So that's where it started, but with PVIT, where I'm seeing is, in my opinion, the best way to have real community engagement isn't just sending out a survey to see if the real community wants a megawatt plus system next to their town. That may be the size of their town. To me, it's integrating it into their day-to-day life, like park benches and parking at the elementary school. And yeah, maybe we're not selling 10,000 mods. Maybe this bathroom only has $1,000 profit margin, but integrating it into spaces where people are like, naturally it overturns those misinformation of like, oh, you're going to get cancer from standing too close to the panel, or the panels are going to take up all our sunlight and you're going to steal all the sunlight. And like these just obviously inaccurate bits of information, but if something's so foreign and so distant, it's scary. It's like cybersecurity. It's like nobody knows anything about it except for the people who do, and they have their own circles, but like, yeah, it's just a scary thing if you don't know anything about it.
So PVIT, what does that stand for? That's your company.
Photovoltaics and Integrated Technologies.
Oh, PV photovoltaic. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
PV photovoltaic. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
no, I'm just kidding.
yeah, and so that was basically just
integrated technologies.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think what we're seeing is it's more than just solar these days. It's not just a panel on a roof. There's battery technologies, there's smartphones, everything has a battery. Everything is running AI, so there's a lot of intricacies, and this is where I'm really grateful for your program and the work that you do, and Bill and all those other educators and some really great people that have been presenting and talking this week through some of the education platforms. But the big talk of getting the information out there to our communities and training people to understand these systems and integrating that into our community college networks and integrating it into our DOPL programs or Department of Professional Licensing or whatever it might be. And so like to be able to go to the state level with a NABCEP cert and then go to them and say, hey, I've done my work or my prereqs, and can we look at maybe doing stuff within the state? And then they can look at that and say, this is an accredited organization and we will accept this as like a form of honor or certification or qualification or however you want to call it,
All right. So what's the NABCEP certification you're going for right now?
I think I was telling you I was going for the full alphabet soup, the whole...
All of them,
yeah,
okay.
But not quite all of them, but yeah, I'll probably start within the inspectors and start advising with the county to help some of that, and then all the way up to PVIT and do the design engineering side is hopefully get there.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of them. There's more NABCEP letters that you can get after your name than there are letters in the alphabet. I think there's like probably 30-something now, and it's always growing. I was just talking to Sean O'Brien, and he said that they are even going to have an associate commissioning and maintenance certification, or actually an associate is not a certification, but everybody calls it that.
Credential, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, credential. Yeah, credential. Well, thanks a lot, Jesse Faircloth. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can go to homesteadhybrid.com and you can meet me there, or you can go email me at jesse@pvit.solar. But yeah, you can contact me there. Or if you're ever passing through Moab, please reach out. It's one of those towns you just say Solar Jesse and they'll know who you're talking about.
All right, Solar Jesse, and this is Solar Sean, and you've been listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast, and we are recording live from the Power Up Live Pro Studio presented by Terra Hive. Thanks to RE Plus and Suncast Media for hosting us. And thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Go to Solar, SEAN, that's SolarSean.com, and get yourself all of the NABCEP alphabet soup. That will make you so important. More important than any president anywhere is to have every different NABCEP letter after your name. Keep them current. Thanks for listening. Woo!